Are you struggling to find good starting loot in Blackout? Are you bored of your current drop spots and looking for somewhere fresh? Maybe you're looking to avoid hot drops, or maybe you're looking to get into a quick fight right off the bat. Whatever it is you're looking for, I'm going to cover all of this and more, as well as share some of my favorite and least favorite drop spots, and I'm going to do it right now. Let's do this. Hello and welcome. I am Amedeo602, and if this is your first time on the channel, please take this opportunity to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future videos or streams. Today we're going to cover drop spots in Blackout. First, I want to give a huge shout out to one of my subscribers, Daragh Kelly, for giving me the idea to make this video. If anyone has any other requests for videos, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. I can't promise that I'll be able to make every video that's requested, but I do really enjoy reading and responding to everyone's comments. Now, let's talk about drop spots. The original comment on the screen here is a pretty open-ended one. The best to worst spots could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in that particular game. Several factors go into my personal decision about where to drop, such as whether anyone on my team is trying to unlock a character, the game mode that we're playing, whether we're in hot pursuit or duos or quads, the distance from the zone that I am considering to the center of the map and from the starting path of the chopper, the likelihood of running into enemy players in each location, the amount and quality of loot available in each location, the number of item and crate spawns that I know of in each location, the alternate drop routes in each location, whether I want to do an early drop or a late drop, and finally, how much I actually enjoy playing at each location. As I just mentioned, the first thing I consider is if anyone on my team is trying to unlock a specific character, then you may have to go to that location. For instance, if someone on your team is trying to unlock Woods, then you really do need to drop in the location where you can pick up Woods Bandana. There's really not a whole lot else to say about this other than sometimes your mission decides where you need to go. And just like with your mission, sometimes the game mode that you're playing really plays a key role in deciding where you need to go. For instance, when I'm playing Hot Pursuit, I don't land at the outskirts of the map. I don't go to the hydro dam or construction or turbine. I just don't want to go to those locations because the circle just isn't conducive to it. Likewise, the amount of loot in a location makes a big difference when you're playing quads versus duos. There are some locations on the map that have great loot for a duo, but not that great a loot for a quad, so I tend to avoid them for quads, but I would love to drop there in duos. Another key factor is the distance from the zone that I'm considering dropping to the center of the map. And there's nothing special about the center of the map, it's just the most likely place that the circle is going to be in your favor. So I tend to like dropping closer to the center of the map most of the time, unless I'm feeling like I want to get in a vehicle and drive around, and then I would rather pick something on the outskirts of the map. Another important thing to consider is the distance of the location that you're going to drop to the starting path of the chopper. The closer you are to the chopper's starting line, the more likely you're going to run into enemies most of the time. Now certainly there are exceptions to this, and the only way to really tell how many people are already in a location is to do a late drop, but more on that in a little bit. Speaking of the likelihood of running into enemy players, sometimes you just want to get kills and practice your gun skill, and that's fine. Try to pick a hot drop location for that. Sometimes you really just want to win the game, or sometimes you're having a rough day and you just don't want to die. In those cases, picking something that's farther from the starting path of the chopper usually will work out to your advantage. I also think a lot about the amount and the quality of loot available in each location. And when I say the quality of loot, I'm thinking about things like gold guns, crates, and another important thing is where are the crate spawns in each location? How many do I know of? Just to take, cargo docks for example. There are 3 crates that can spawn in the water. There's at least 1 crate in the blue crates hanging above the boat now. And let's see, there are at least 2 other big crate spawns. 3. I'm thinking out loud here, but there are at least 3 others. So I can name 7 big crate spawns just in the cargo docks right off the top of my head. It's also very important to know different drop routes that you can take in each location in case an enemy gets to your preferred drop spot before you do. I also think about whether I want to do an early drop or a late drop. In almost every situation, I prefer to do an early drop, but there is a time and a place for a late drop, and some people prefer to drop late because it lets them know where the other players are. Finally, I like to consider, just how much I like each location. Some places just jive with me better than other locations, and those are the ones that I prefer. They're fun because I've had good experiences there, I've wiped duos or maybe even entire squads in some of these places, and I just like them. They're just fun to drop at. I just dropped a ton of information on you, so you're probably thinking, yeah, sure, all that's great, but where are the best places to drop? And again, that's a great question. Keep in mind that these locations are my personal opinion based on the factors I just described. And without further ado, here's my list of favorite locations along with a short justification of why I chose each one. Number 10 on my list of favorite places to drop is Fracking Tower. The loot here is pretty good. There are lots of crates, especially the crate underneath the big doors in the middle. And it's just a nice central location for the map. Some downsides of this location are the village just outside the door, as well as a hill on the other side with some pretty high ground on you. Number 9 on my list of favorite places to drop is Hydro Dam. The loot here is very good, maybe even a little bit better than Fracking Tower. It's usually not too crowded now that all the events have sort of died down. The big downside to the Hydro Dam, however, is that a lot of times the circle will just push you very far away and you need to ride in the boat, and the boat doesn't always spawn anymore, so that can be a huge downside to Hydro Dam, is just getting away. Number 8 on my list of favorite places is actually an unnamed area, but most people are familiar with it by now. I like to call it Woods, and it's the location where you can pick up the bandana to unlock the Woods character. Now this location can be really chaotic, which I enjoy from time to time. It also has potential crate spawns, and you're practically guaranteed a vehicle. That vehicle could be a chopper, or an ATV, even an ARAV, or a truck. Really, kind of the sky is the limit with the Woods. The big problem here is that it's not very good for anything other than solos or duos. There's not nearly enough loot here for an entire squad. Next up on the list, we have Turbine. Turbine has tons and tons of great loot. It's also usually not very busy at the start of the game, and it even has multiple potential spawns for choppers, ATVs, trucks, and an ARAV. The big downside with Turbine is just like Hydro Dam. Sometimes you have to travel very far for that initial circle. Coming up at number 6 on my list of favorite places to drop is the train station. The loot here is fantastic. There are tons of crate spawns. Sometimes it's very busy at the start of the game, which, like I said, is a good thing for me. But the downside is it's really annoying to get into the different train cars and get all that loot. So it's a little bit annoying, but the loot's really good, and there are usually lots of good fights at the beginning. Next up on my list is Firing Range. Now, everybody I'm sure has dropped here from time to time because it's such a central location. The loot is absolutely top tier in here. We have lots and lots of crate spawns. We even have the Annihilator spawn for the Seraph Numbers outfit. And this location can be absolute insanity at the start of the game. Firing Range is great. Another location that can be even more chaotic at the start of the game is Asylum. Asylum has tons and tons of loot, lots of throwables including acid bombs and wraith fires, if you're into those sort of things. It can be incredibly busy at the start of the game, lots of dark corners to hide in. It can even have zombies, and the graveyard's nearby. You can hear people fighting in the graveyard and run up and attack them. The only thing really missing from Asylum is crate spawns. My third favorite drop in the game is Construction Site. Now, sometimes at construction I like to go at the very top, sometimes you go out front, but most times I really like the parking garage. At the bottom of the parking garage there's a possible crate spawn, so that's nice. You've also got crate spawns around the back, around the front, and around the side of construction, as well as all the way at the top, so lots of potential crate spawns. It's a very popular site at the start of the game, and perhaps the best thing about the construction site is just the sheer amount of loot that you can get. If you loot the entire thing from top to bottom, you can have more than enough loot for an entire 4-man squad. The big downside to construction, just like Turbine and Hydro Dam I mentioned before, is when the storm chooses the other side of the map, you have to get into a vehicle and get moving quickly. And of course the fourth corner of the map would be Nuketown. Again, this is a great location with lots of top-tier loot, the possibility of zombies. It can be very busy at the start, and there's almost always a vehicle, which is a good thing because, well, you're probably gonna need it. Nuketown comes in at number 2 on my list of top drops. Oh, and don't forget about the sign in Nuketown. It'll tell you exactly how many players are in the area. And if you see that your squad is the only group there, you can sprint around and pick up everything and then get out of there. My longtime subscribers will probably already have guessed my top spot by now. And in fact, if you leave a comment down below, just let me know if you guessed this as my favorite location to drop. It's the Red Barn. The loot here is pretty good. Now, it's not top tier like construction or firing range, but it's a great central location. There are tons of drop options, lots of long sight lines, so it's really hard for anyone to sneak up behind you. And you can actually drop into several of the windows of the Red Barn. To me, that's a great thing because it gives you the option of, hey, if someone's in front of you and you see them going to a window, you just pick a different window or the hole in the roof. And I really like that because I feel like it increases the skill gap in choosing an alternate route of where to drop. Now that we've covered the best of the best, let's go over the worst of the worst. Just like the previous list, all of these are my own personal opinion. Now that's not to say that any of these are bad places to land. In fact, some of them can be fun from time to time. But in order to have best, you have to have some worst. Coming in at number 10 on my least favorite drops, cargo docks. There just aren't enough vehicles for a location this far out in the map, and I find myself running toward the circle from cargo docks far too often. There's also way too much water around this. When you look at the cargo docks, which of course makes sense because, well, it's cargo docks, it's virtually surrounded by water on 3 sides. That's just too much water. You move slowly in the water, you're a sitting duck in the water, and even though there are quite a few crate spawns, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a huge fan of cargo docks, mostly because of the vehicles and the water. Number 9 on my list is Estates. Now, Estates is a weird drop for me, because I feel like I have people sneak up on me all the time at Estates. This actually just happened the other day. I was playing, and I couldn't hear where the people were. They were right on top of me. I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's my headset, my sound settings, I don't know what it is, but Estates, it's like the place is haunted. I can't hear people coming up behind me. I'm also a little bit burned out on Estates back from when I tried to unlock Reznov. Other than that, Estates has pretty good loot and good chance of a crate, but it's just too far from the center of the map, and sometimes it is hard to find a vehicle there, especially if another group has already gotten to one before you. Next up on my list is Array. I feel like a lot of people drop at Array, and there just isn't quite enough loot to go around. You're also surrounded by modern houses and the diner on 2 sides of the Array, and then other small houses on the 3rd side of Array, and a little village on the 4th side. So if you're in Array, there's a good chance people could come at you from all 4 directions at once, and it's just too much risk for too little reward. Right next to the Array, of course, is the diner, and I am really not a big fan of dropping at the diner, especially in quads, because there's just not enough loot to go around. You also have the unpleasant flavor of the Array and Nuketown sandwich. And yeah, that pretty much covers it for the diner. The zombies are great, turning on the jukebox is a lot of fun, but unfortunately the diner is just pinched right between 2 very popular named locations. Next up on my list is another zombie location, and it's one of the other unnamed zombie locations, and it's the graveyard. The graveyard is really difficult to loot because it's hard to see things in the graveyard. Sure, the loot there is okay, but you're sitting ducks for anyone looking to ambush you from Asylum, and they have a lot better loot. And you're in the wide open. You have no cover at all except for a couple of tombstones. Especially when the Blightfather event's active, I don't want to be anywhere near the graveyard at the start of the game. Going back to the named locations, number 5 on my list of least favorite drops is Factory. I feel like the different looting areas in Factory are just too far spread out, and I feel like I'm running for miles once I leave the factory. There's better loot and less running to be had all over the map. And speaking of places that make you run a mile, let's talk about Ghost Town. I love the atmosphere of Ghost Town, and I'm a huge fan of the multiplayer map. But boy, the lack of vehicles and the remote location in Ghost Town just make it one of my least favorite drops, because I feel like when I'm leaving Ghost Town, it's got to be in a vehicle and I'm running. Unless I get really lucky and the circle closes on Ghost Town, which, let's face it, is pretty uncommon. Speaking of things that are uncommon, how common is it for them to move a named location around? Well, that's just exactly what they've done with number 3 on my list, Hijacked. I was never a big fan of the original location of Hijacked, just because you had to swim for miles and miles. It's a little bit better being next to Nuketown, but why in the world would I go to Hijacked when I can just go to Nuketown? The Von Voyage at Hijacked just feels like a gimmick to me. It was a great map back in Black Ops 2, but it really just doesn't have a place in Blackout, in my opinion. Aside from that, they added several layers to the ship that just makes it feel like a labyrinth that you're going through. Not a fan at all, and that's why it made number 3 on my least favorite drop spots. My second least favorite place to drop, and this is probably going to upset quite a few of you, is Rivertown. I feel like Rivertown is just far too chaotic, which is kind of strange because on my list of top things, I said that I liked the chaotic drops. Well, not Rivertown, just because the loot spawns are far too unpredictable. I feel like it's really just rolling the dice whether I'm even going to get a gun or just instantly die. You also have a ton of buildings in there and just way too many places to camp. In addition to that, you also seem to always have someone with mesh mines either at the main intersection of Rivertown or across one of the bridges. As I said before, I really don't like swimming in this game just because you're so vulnerable, and if you land in Rivertown, there's a really good chance that you're going to have to cross at least one of those rivers. My least favorite place to drop, by far, is the Lighthouse. The loot there is not very good. There's not enough loot there for an entire squad of 4. A duo? Yeah, you're probably okay. There's one tiny road out of the place, with way too much water on all the other sides. When I drop at Lighthouse, I almost always get killed by someone camping at the bottom of the lighthouse, crouched in a corner. And there's not enough vehicles. If you're lucky, you'll get an ATV. This is by far my least favorite location. I really dislike going to Lighthouse, except in the occasional duos match, or when I'm just trying to unlock a zombies character. I wouldn't recommend going to Lighthouse if you can avoid it. Of course, when I stream with my subscribers, I'm happy to drop into any of these locations because it is fun to go outside of your comfort zone every once in a while, especially when you're playing with people you don't get the chance to play with very often. And if you want to join me on a stream sometime, go ahead and join the Amedeo602 PS4 Community. And if you're just looking to improve your game or unlock a few more characters, then check out some of my playlists for Blackout. Links to all of them as well as my Twitter are in the description down below. Now it's time to hear from you guys. I'm curious to know some of your favorite and least favorite drop locations in Blackout. How closely does your list match mine? Are there some locations on my list of favorites that you can't stand? Or maybe there's a spot I don't care for very much, and you think I need to go back there and try again. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. GG, fellas.